You've probably heard the phrase, "distance makes the heart grow fonder." But let's be honest, most people don't believe this applies to them when it comes to relationships. Instead, they panic when things start to feel different, when someone pulls back, when responses to texts get slower, or when plans are cancelled and rescheduled. The instinct is to push harder. They may send multiple texts, try to reconnect immediately, and push for more attention. But here's the truth. This approach rarely works. Most people assume that putting in more effort will win back the other person, that showing how much they care will make the other person appreciate them more. But the reality is that when you're always available, it becomes difficult for the other person to miss you. Think about it. If you always have access to something, you stop appreciating its value. You only realize its importance when it's taken away. The same rule applies to relationships. If you're constantly proving your worth, always trying to fix things, or always available to show up, you lose your value. The other person doesn't have the chance to miss you. So instead of always forcing your presence, give them the space to miss you. That subtle shift can change everything. At first, they may not even notice the change. They're used to you always being around, always responding, and always showing up. They assume nothing has changed. But then something shifts. They realize they haven't heard from you. No random check-ins, no likes on social media posts, no indirect attempts to stay in touch, just silence. At first, they might brush it off. Oh, they're probably busy. They'll reach out soon. But as time passes, they begin to wonder, why haven't they texted? The uncertainty starts to creep in. What started as a sense of control begins to feel like a loss. And that's when the panic sets in. It's not losing someone who chases them that causes fear, but losing someone who is completely okay without them. As time goes on, they start to miss you in ways they didn't expect. At first, they may try to convince themselves that you're just playing hard to get, or that you're thinking about them as much as they're thinking about you. But as more days pass without any sign from you, their confidence starts to crack. They were expecting a response, but instead, they get silence. That's what messes with their mind the most. When they realize that you're not making any moves, most people would have sent something by now, a casual text or comment to keep the door open, but you're silent. Now, instead of feeling in control, they feel ignored. Most people can't stand being ignored, especially by someone they thought would always care. This is when the overthinking starts to spiral. At first, they may try to brush it off. Oh, they're just being distant. But soon, questions start popping up. What if they're over me? What if they're talking to someone else? What if I was the one who was replaceable? That last thought is the one that hits hardest. They start checking your social media more often, hoping to find some sign that you're still thinking about them. But when they see nothing, no texts, no hints, no effort from you, it changes everything. They start to feel lost, and in that moment, the dynamic completely shifts. Now they're the ones wondering what you're thinking. They're the ones feeling the absence. When someone realizes they can no longer affect your emotions, that's when they start craving your attention again. They start to miss the validation they once got from you, and just like that, the power dynamic shifts. Yeah, they're the ones looking for signs, trying to figure out what you're doing, feeling the loss. All you did was stop giving them what they expected, your constant attention. The situation has shifted entirely. At first, they were sure you'd eventually reach out, send a message, or give them some kind of sign that you still cared. But now, after days, maybe even weeks of no response, it truly hits them. They're no longer in control. They're not deciding when or if you reconnect. The power is no longer in their hands. For the first time, they feel powerless. Let's be clear, they won't admit this to anyone, not to their friends, not on social media, and not even to themselves. Instead, they'll act cool, post a casual selfie with a mysterious caption like, "Some things are better left unsaid." But deep down, they're struggling. They don't just miss your presence, they miss the effect you had on them. They miss how your attention made them feel important. They miss the comfort of knowing they could always count on your validation. And now that's all gone. They scroll through their phone, wondering if they should reach out, unsure of what to do next. But the problem is, they no longer know where they stand with you. Before, they were confident they knew exactly how you felt and what buttons to push to get your attention. But now you've become unpredictable, and that drives them crazy. Because if there's one thing that makes someone rethink everything, it's the feeling of no longer being certain about someone who once seemed so sure of them. They used to think they had options, but now they're wondering if they were just an option to you. That thought alone is enough to make them feel uneasy. The mental gymnastics begin when they can't figure you out. At this point, they're caught in an emotional tug-of-war with themselves. One part of them wants to play it cool, act like they're unbothered, and convince themselves that they had the upper hand all along. But the other part, the part that's overthinking every little detail, is in full panic mode now. The mental gymnastics begin. They start creating scenarios in their head. Maybe you're just trying to teach them a lesson. Maybe you're doing this to get a reaction. Maybe you're just waiting for the right moment to reach out. They start rationalizing your silence because the alternative, the idea that you no longer care, is too unsettling for them to handle. So they test the waters. They might post something subtle enough to seem casual, but just strategic enough to grab your attention. Maybe it's a simple photo or a quote. They wait for that little sign, that one reaction that reassures them that they still have a place in your mind. They keep refreshing their notifications, checking if you've viewed their stories or liked their posts. But nothing happens, and that sends them into a tailspin. They're realizing something they never prepared for. You've stopped playing the game. They expected tension, a little back and forth, some resistance at first. Sure, but eventually they thought you'd slip up, that your emotions would override your logic. Instead, you've given them the gift of uncertainty. Now they're chasing answers. They start checking mutual friends' stories, looking through your feed for any signs of a new interest, analyzing old messages to see if they missed something that might have shown they were losing your attention. The worst part, every time they check, they find exactly what they fear the most: silence. And that's the moment when they start to feel something they've never felt before with you: discomfort. Not because they're angry or upset, but because for the first time they're uncertain about you. And nothing is more addictive than trying to regain certainty about something that once seemed guaranteed. This is where things get interesting. Before, they had a roadmap. They knew exactly what to expect from you. If they pulled away, you'd chase. If they gave mixed signals, you'd try harder. If they needed a confidence boost, they could always count on you to provide it. But now, they have no idea what's going on in your mind, and that uncertainty is driving them crazy. Here's something many people don't realize. Women, like anyone, seek emotional security. It doesn't necessarily mean they always want commitment, but they do want certainty. They want to feel like they know where they stand with you, like they can predict your next move, and like they still have influence over your emotions. But right now, they're getting nothing. And this lack of control doesn't just bother them, it consumes them. So they start testing again. At first it's subtle. They might like an old post, reply to a story that wasn't meant for them, or find some excuse to message you about something minor. Like, do you still have that playlist you made? They're not reaching out because they desperately want the playlist. They're reaching out because they need to know where they stand. And here's where most people make a mistake. They take the bait. They see a small sign of engagement, and suddenly all logic flies out the window. Flies out the window. They rush in too quickly, responding as though they've been waiting for this moment all along. And just like that, the power shifts back in her favor. Because now she knows. She knows that she still affects you. She knows that she still occupies space in your mind. She knows that no matter how much time has passed, she can still pull you back in. But you're different. You don't give her that validation. You don't react right away. And this is where her frustration builds. She needs to know if she still holds a place in your mind. She needs to feel that sense of control again, because without it, everything feels uncertain. But if she doesn't reach out, that means something she never considered before. Maybe she miscalculated. Maybe you were never the one she needed to be testing. Maybe you were never the one chasing her. She was actually chasing you all along. And that realization, that's when things start spiraling for her. At this stage, she's no longer just missing you, she's battling herself. It's no longer about whether you care about her. It's about why she can't stop thinking about you. And that's where the real panic begins. Because before, she had control over her emotion. She could compartmentalize, distract herself, convince herself she made the right decision, and move on without hesitation. But now, every unanswered question is a weight on her mind. Why hasn't he reached out? Why is he suddenly so indifferent? What if I made a mistake? What if he's actually better off without me? And that last one, just that thought alone, is enough to haunt her. Because now, it's not just about you anymore. Now she's questioning her own choices, her own judgment, her own ability to predict people's behavior. She always believed she could read people, that she knew how relationships worked, and that she could control the outcome just by managing her level of interest and engagement. But you threw her entire system into disarray. Now she's stuck in an emotional loop. She starts replaying old conversations, wondering if she overlooked something. She overanalyzes past interactions, searching for signs that she misread you. She checks your social media more than she'd ever admit, looking for any hints of change. And here's the craziest part. The more she does this, the more attached she becomes. Because now you're the puzzle she can't solve, and nothing frustrates a woman more than a man she thought she had figured out, only to realize she never really understood him at all. When she tries to regain control, it's important to understand something about losing control. It's not something most people accept gracefully. She's going to fight it, and she'll do so in a way that doesn't make her look weak. Instead of outright messaging you, she'll start testing different ways to get your attention back without admitting she's the one chasing. She might show up where she knows you'll be. She'll interact with people in your circle, hoping the word gets back to you. She'll post things designed to make you wonder what she's up to. And most importantly, she's waiting for you to break first. Because if you do, if you react, engage, or acknowledge any of her subtle moves, then she wins. Not because she wants you back, not even because she misses you deeply, but because she wants to prove to herself that she still has control over the situation. But what happens when you don't react? That's when she truly spirals. Because if you're not watching her, not thinking about her, and not reacting to her, then what does that say about her value in your life? And now she's the one feeling replaceable. And that's a feeling she was never prepared to face. At this stage, she's exhausted every mental trick in the book. She's tried rationalizing your silence, testing the waters, pretending she doesn't care, and even subtly trying to provoke a reaction. But nothing has worked. Now she's left with the truth she was never prepared to face. She actually lost you. At first she tells herself, okay, he's just being stubborn. He'll crack soon. But days turn into weeks and you remain unbothered. That's when true regret sets in. The memories she once dismissed as just a phase now seem irreplaceable. The connection she assumed was always within reach now feels like a closed door. And the confidence she had in assuming you'd always be an option is completely shattered. This is the moment she starts asking herself the dangerous questions. Did I ruin something special? What if I never find someone like him again? Why did I push him away in the first place? And the worst thought of all, what if he's already moved on? Because here's the reality. Women don't regret losing a man until they're forced to compare him to what's left. Maybe she's casually dating again. Maybe she's gone back to entertaining old flings, or maybe she's even keeping herself distracted with meaningless attention. But no matter what she does, something feels off. Because now, every man she interacts with has a shadow hanging over him. The memory of you, the way you carried yourself, the way you didn't tolerate nonsense, the way you knew your worth. And deep down she starts to realize you were never the problem. The problem was that she assumed you'd always be waiting, but you're not. And that's what haunts her the most. Not the loss itself, but the fact that it was completely avoidable. That if she had valued you sooner, if she had seen what was in front of her, if she hadn't played the same tired games, she wouldn't be feeling this emptiness right now. But now, she has to live with the consequences of her choices, and you're already on to bigger and better things. She watches, she waits, she hopes, but you've left the game behind. And that's when she finally understands. You weren't the one who lost her, she was the one who lost you. If this opened your eyes, don't stop here. Click the next video on your screen and keep upgrading your mindset. The more you understand this, the more power you'll have in every situation.